this is very scary because, I mean, the tensions between the two countries have led to their being on the brink of war many times, and this is going to exacerbate that, isn't it? I mean, I had a brief word once with President Jimmy Carter, and he said, you know, climate change is going to... He was talking about peace, but he said now that climate change is happening, all that will be bound to happen is that all these tense areas will become even more tense, and there is even more likelihood of war. Are you afraid of war?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this may crop up because now they're getting a lot of water. They are not aware that this is because of the glacier melting into the Zanskar Valley in the Ladakh Valley, where most of the water goes to the Indus River system. But once the water dry up, they can make a political issue out of it and say, oh, India, look here, India is not giving us water. But India can't help it because we don't have any glacier anymore. So what will happen? That is one of the big issue. Another with the Tibetan Plateau. Many of our rivers coming from the Tibetan Plateau. So Tibetan Plateau is also melting fast. So when then India can always say, okay, China has stopped our water, but the Tibetan Plateau has no water, so how they will give it? So they're bound to come these issues in the next 50 years or 100 years.
And what about in the next 20, 30 years? Will there already be signs of people suffering from food shortages and water shortages? Or is it something, you know, many people say, oh, well, if it's something in 100 years' time, you know, scientists will have fixed it by then. But, you know, the signs often seem to be that it's much closer to hand. What is your view?
No, my view is on that, okay, now because the melting is there, but the seasonal variability is there because earlier we used to have a lot of snowfall and then used to melt in the springtime and they used to get water. But now what is happening now, the snow is coming very late, sometimes the snow is not coming, and when it falls along with the black carbon molecules, it melts out quickly. So by the April, May, June, there is no water. So that is also creating problem for the farmers, even within the Himalayan mountains and downstream. Communities also affected by that. So that is also causing a lot of problem to the communities, and they are facing the livelihood issues. And in India, Pakistan or South Asia, the storage is only 250 cubic meter per capita, whereas in the developed world is 5,000 cubic meter per capita. So how much is the difference between that? So hardly there is any storage. So if you remove this snow water storage, because our other storages like the wetlands already dried up and the reservoirs are there, and our rivers are all polluted rivers. So that kind of a storage is already gone. So we have to depend these freshwater resources, and that is where we are hopeful that this Copenhagen can give some results, and the people should agree, the country should agree on the cuts.
And do you think that these cuts will happen soon? Because, I mean, often people think about glaciers and snow in terms of leisure, but actually you're talking about absolutely basic needs. And are people here, do you think, taking it seriously enough to make the kinds of cuts soon enough to stop these terrible, irreversible changes happening?
Yeah, you know, the whole problem is that the scientists are realizing it. Scientists have a basic data, and you see on the Arctic region, there is a whole impact of black carbon, and that's why the Arctic sea ice is melting much faster, and they are predicting that because of the Arctic Sea and the Western Antarctica, which is collapsing already, so the sea level will rise about 1.4 meters. Then what will happen to these island countries? So when we are seeing that kind of a scenario, and the Himalayan glaciers are melting much faster than was predicted about 10 years back, so that will create a lot of urgency. But I don't see any urgency in the policymakers. They are taking it very lightly, that okay, the scientists are saying sometimes they are doubting even the scientific evidences also. So that is, I think that the policymakers has to take seriously the scientific evidences build up for the Antarctic, for Antarctica, for the third pole, the Hindu Kush Himalayan mountain system, including Himalayan Tibetan Plateau region, which is melting much faster.
And what sort of numbers are you thinking of, Professor? I mean, how many people will be affected, say in the next 30, 40 years, if things are allowed to go on? Are we talking?
Scientists have predicted that 43% of the Himalayan Tibetan Plateau, snow and glaciers will be melted out by 2070 and 75 by the end of this century. So that will be the huge issue by the end of this century. By 2050, there will be a crisis. What I'm looking for that. There's a huge crisis coming.
And do you see any solutions for this? Because, as you say, the governments don't seem to be moving fast enough. We've seen the small island states, for example, really calling for help. And do you feel that the governments in the regions that you're talking about are really going to hear the cries of scientists and of the populations?
Yeah, I say, for example, in the Arctic region and the Himalayan region, at least they can abate the black carbon thing. Because if you put some filters on the diesel trucks, which are hundreds and thousands are playing, and put up some restrictions on the cement factories or industrial sector, so we can clean the air. So once we clean the air, we can stabilize some climate. And once we stabilize the climate, then it will be a little longer. We can prolong the life of these ice resources, whether they are in the Arctic or in the Himalaya or in the Antarctica, because these are the crucial issues, because both these poles are very crucial or critical from the point of sea level rise, because once you remove the ice from the sea, then the more heating will be there and more expansion will be there and sea level will rise. It's already risen at certain places about 8 inches and 9 inches, so it is going to be 1.4 meters by the next 30 years. That's what predicted by the scientists. So I'm really worried about those things, and I hope that the policymakers also take into account all these scientific data and take some hard decisions in Copenhagen.
And what can ordinary people do to help in this process? We've just got a moment or so. What can all of us do as citizens to reverse this, or to get the policymakers to understand?
We cannot reverse the whole process, but we can take some lifestyle changes. Say everybody's using cars. But I remember that in India and China there was hardly any cars about 20 years back. Very few people, but now everybody is having a car. And even in India, the nano car, even those who are on the bicycle, they are buying a car, which is very cheap. So you are putting up more and more emission into the atmosphere. Then how you are going to control it? So you have to take the lifestyle changes. You have to take a very hard decision. You stop eating the meat, become more vegetarian, because deforestation is also contributing about 20% of the CO2. So we have to have more afforestation program, and we stop deforestation, which is happening in large scale in developing world.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor, for your scientific guidance there. And I hope that your voice will be heard now all over the world, and that the policymakers will do what they need to do, and urgently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.